Get ready to listen, learn, and earn CE hours. This podcast features content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits.
Welcome back to Whistleblowing in Healthcare. Do we have legal protections? In this second episode, we're going to focus on the practical steps that you can take when considering whistleblowing, as well as best practices to ensure your safety and effectiveness. Successful whistleblower cases have actually led to systemic changes in over 60% of healthcare institutions that have been investigated. So we want to make sure that you're equipped with actionable strategies and insights to navigate the whistleblowing process confidently. I'm your host, Dr. Candace Pierce, and back for episode 2 is our legal expert, Dr. James Stowe. Thank you, Jay, for bringing your wealth of knowledge to our listeners.
Very excited to be here.
Yes, I thought we could begin this discussion kind of moving it in like a case study flow with kind of what do I do next? So I am working in a healthcare facility and I'm at work and I suspect that something is wrong. What should I do first if I suspect that this is wrong?
Great question. Depending on the size of your organization, who you work with, they oftentimes have methodologies in place for you to let them know something's wrong, right? Do you have an event reporting system? Do you have an anonymous hotline? You know, you go through orientation with facilities and you hear these things and you just kind of in one ear and out the other. Mm-hmm. But it's really your tool to kind of whistleblow on something that is an issue without having to attach your name to it. That's oftentimes one of the best first steps because you get to kind of feel what any sort of investigation or blowback would be, right? And I say that because you're likely reporting on something in an area that you work. And so the investigation is going to occur in your area. And your coworkers, if you're not there, will talk about it, we'll be there and you'll kind of hear what's going on. So it's a great first step. But even before that, before kind of making a report is you really need to define what is wrong. What is the actual action that is wrong? If you think about it and you go, I didn't like the way Dr. Smith talked to that patient. That's not right. I filed a whistleblower action. Well, we should all be nice and polite, but there's actually no law that says we can't be rude. And so,
unfortunately,
yes, I wish there were at times for sure, but unfortunately there's not. And, you get the First Amendment and all that kind of stuff, but you could say what you want. So, you really need to define what's wrong. And by that, you've really got to have some specific examples, right? You need to have date, time, patient name. Was it a physician? Was it an administrator's name? What they said? Did memos come out? Was there education to a certain thing? Can you get copies of that? You've got to have some very granular, very detailed notes on the action that you're going to report on. You also need to have the outcome, right? You need to know what happened. And you need to have this over and over and over again so that you can illustrate a trend. You can illustrate there is an issue, it's ongoing, and it has not been corrected. But gathering evidence is the first step. Now, if you decide to go outside of your institution and report this, when you make your actual whistleblowing case, OSHA has got 60 days to investigate. Imagine how many investigations they're doing across the country, how many each individual may be assigned to do. If your details are not very good, you can imagine that your claim may not be investigated very fully, very deeply, and nothing may come of it at that time. So if you're going to go that route, be diligent. Be diligent. Have what you need. I would say get in touch with an attorney. When you start this process, once you've made your mind up, you'll really need an attorney because you are relaying patient information, right? Like patient names, specific things about them that can be basically protected health information. And so the last thing you want to do is whistleblow and try to make wrongdoing right and then get sued for a HIPAA violation. So
Right.
it's very important that you get in touch with an attorney. There are ways and there are avenues that the attorney can actually respond using that information and keep you out of the hot seat. So the first thing is really defining what the wrongdoing is, and you need to look up your policies and procedures of your hospital, your institution. Is it outlined that this is okay? And if it is outlined that way, then you need to dig into more so and go, okay, could it be different? Should it be different? Or do they actually have good sound backing that says, hey, their pathway is correct? It may kind of stop you in your tracks. So you really got to dig in and figure that out. But that's the very first thing I would do is detailed investigation, detailed notes, and get in touch with an attorney.
Now, when you're talking about defining the wrongdoing, can you kind of give me some more information there? Because some things we think are wrong might not need to be, maybe that just needs to go to your director versus whistleblowing versus it's not anything that needs to be. Can you kind of give us some more examples there?
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. You have a patient that comes into say emergency department or ICU or gets admitted to med surg, and you feel as a bedside nurse that frontline that we need to be aggressive. We need to be doing things. This patient's life is on the line and we need to be active. Physician rounds, hospitalist comes by, emergency department doctor, intensivist, they round on the patient and they're not that aggressive. They don't do much. And you feel that is wrong. That is wrong, right? Their life is at risk. That is wrong. The question I would have for you is if you start raising your voice, making reports, is it wrong? Under medical judgment as a physician, is it prudent for them maybe to see how the patient materializes over the next 4 hours, 24 hours before they get aggressive, see if the issue resolves on them? I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor, so I would actually have to go and really research that disease process, what should be done in the first 4 hours, what should be done in the first 8 hours, what should be done in the first 24 hours, to truly educate myself to know, was the doctor wrong in not being aggressive in treating the patient? So that's kind of what I mean by those situations. Another easy example is that test wasn't needed. That doctor is billing for that. Or there's a billing issue and I think it's fraud. It's fraud. I'm going to report them. How much do you know about billing? Do you work in the billing department? Do you work in revenue department? You really need to dig into these things and figure out whether it's truly wrong. The lab test may not be needed, but if the medical texts say, yeah, you can test for these 12 things, they kind of have the green light for it, right? They can do it. Doesn't mean it's needed. Doesn't mean they're still not billing them for it and for a needless test, but they do have the green light to say it's okay. So you really have to dig into these different situations and scenarios and figure out, even if your gut tells you something's wrong, I love it. Follow your gut, investigate. But before you raise your voice and put the flag up, you kind of need to do some homework and make sure that you're right. Okay. Make sure you have a sound argument on why something needs to be changed.
Now, what are some of those red flag things that you're like, oh man, that needs to go to OSHA. That is definitely something we should be whistleblowing. What are those red flags? Because I feel like a lot of what you're saying is kind of like yellow. It's yellow. I need to do some investigation because it might not be anything at all. But what are those? Oh man, that's a red flag.
Well, you really have to ask yourself, are you ready for the scrutiny? Are you ready for kind of the thumb to be put on you once you make a report? What I would encourage everyone to do is if they have the opportunity to use a event reporting system, 800 number, utilize that. Go to the quality department, volunteer to be a part of root cause analysis on behalf of your department. You don't have to state the reason or I want to be involved in this particular thing. Just go and be involved. People don't want to participate, so they will gladly have you there. Okay. Be involved. If you are involved in a process to change things, I think you'll see that there are a lot of good people in a lot of places that really want to improve healthcare, and they do great work. I think the red flag for me is not necessarily an absolute on this issue, I'm going to go make a formal complaint. It's if I see the issue and there's been a complaint either by myself or others repeatedly, and nothing has happened in 6 months, nothing has happened in a year, then that's when I sincerely think about it. Because I also kind of in a dual purpose of a formal complaint at that time is now also have all of those examples, right? I have the data that I need that shows an ongoing ignorance of the issue or failure to correct it, okay? And so that's what I do. Now, as I sit here and talk about this, some of the red flags, more along the billing side, I would see the red flag. If there are life and limb issues that are not being corrected immediately, and look, the wheels in a hospital turn slow. I'm not the first to say this. I won't
You're
be the
not
last.
wrong.
They turn slow. Okay, so no matter what it is, the wheels turn slow. But if your complaint has been heard and they're working on it and they're trying to bring in the right people, it may not be fast enough for you, but if they're sincere about it, you have to decide whether or not you give them some grace and let them try to work it out or just blaze ahead and file a formal complaint.
Who are we whistleblowing to?
So you actually make a formal complaint to Occupational Safety Health Administration or OSHA. You make that complaint under the guise of a number of different laws, acts that have been passed. So let's say it's a billing complaint. It may fall under a CMS Act or Affordable Care Act, even though you're saying, hey, this individual violated this act, and I'm making a formal whistleblower complaint pursuant to the OSHA whistleblower complaint. It gets very tedious. There's a number of different acts you can file under. You're not going to know them unless you're an attorney in that field. I don't expect you to know them. There's no reason for you to know them. Okay. So when you get ready to file a complaint, please seek assistance from an attorney. This is not a negative thing. Most attorneys in this field will actually take your case based on the results at the end and potential profits at the end. And you can do a contract on the alleged earnings. So you may not be out much on the front end financially, at least from a lawsuit perspective, but consult with an attorney so that you can get the proper guidance along the way.
And for clarity, reporting whistleblowing is not the same as when I fill out the reports, the internal reporting mechanisms in the hospital, correct?
Oh, so correct. So if you make a complaint in the hospital, it is going, and most of your hotline and your event reporting and all of the complaint avenues are directed to your quality department. Okay.
Are they anonymous? Nothing's ever really anonymous, but
they can be anonymous. How big is your hospital? Do I recognize your voice in the recorded line? That's a very easy thing,
right.
That happens, but it can be anonymous. The issue is it goes to the quality department, which is non-discoverable in a lawsuit. Okay. That's why it's set up that way. It's not going to be discovered if there's a lawsuit. So, if you don't find that they're producing change out of this, all of your complaints are not going anywhere, right? They're going to be kept in-house. And if someone sues, they can't go get the other complaints because that's in the quality department under non-discoverable in court. So they're not going to get the 47 other people that this action or failure to act happened to. Whistleblower, you can't be anonymous because then they can't ensure that you keep your job and no retaliation. They can't prevent retaliation on an anonymous individual, right? They don't know who to protect. But so you've got to put your name on it and you've got to make a formal complaint.
Which I think a lot of times has the opposite effect of why they want to know who you are. Well, I want to keep you from being retaliated on. But now they know who I am, so now they are going to retaliate on me. When you were talking about discoverable data, though, if I've turned in some complaints through my system that went to quality department, can I keep a copy of those as part of my gathering and holding documents as evidence myself?
So if you're making an internal complaint, you need to read your policies and procedures of your institution on the record retention, record printing, record copying, photocopying, all of that good stuff. Okay. It's all out there. It's one of those things that you cover typically on new hire orientation, which could have been years ago. And you sign a little something, you agree to it, but you don't really remember the ins and outs of it, right? You need to look that up because there's a good chance that you're photocopying, printing out a copy of the document, medical record, someone else, taking it home, what have you, is going to violate that. It actually is going to create a HIPAA violation for that. So if you're not collecting this data specifically for a whistleblower action and have an attorney involved that can help protect you from a HIPAA violation and also policy and procedure violations to the hospital, then you likely are not supposed to take any of that data home with you. Not keep it. You shouldn't take it and keep it in your locker at work, all that kind of good stuff.
It seems very complicated. If we were going to move forward with turning in, with basically being a whistleblower, and this is a lot of, you've got to really think this through, decide if this is good for you, figure out. I mean, I would not have thought if I turned in somebody or a facility that I could then be hit with a lawsuit for breaking HIPAA laws. I would not have, that wouldn't even be on my mind.
Most people don't realize this. Most people are like, I'm trying to do good. Right? I'm trying to stop a bad actor. I'm trying to stop fraud. I'm trying to stop theft. I'm trying to stop patient abuse. And they're trying to do good. But they don't realize the other things that are involved in that. At the end of the day, think back to when you were a child. Did you like when someone told on you that you did something? I've got 2 older sisters. I was not real fond when they told that I was outside riding my bike after dark when I was supposed to be inside. Well, employers and institutions are no different. They don't like being told on. They don't like not knowing. They don't like the risk of being in trouble. Okay. You got to also understand that the head administrators of most businesses, part of their bonus is on a financial performance. That's just the reality. If your business performs better, you get rewarded more. If you face a investigation and have to pay a $2 billion fine, you're not getting your bonus. And they do not like that at all. So you just have to keep that in mind.
How is that lawsuit? So if they bring a lawsuit against you for HIPAA, how is that not part of retaliation? I mean, we all know that that's what is happening.
Well, what it is it allows it does meet retaliation. Okay. But again, there's a couple of components. One, you gotta litigate this lawsuit, and it keeps you from working for how many months, right? Now you may be entitled to back pay, and they may award that. Is your car repossessed in that time? Because you haven't made monthly payments. Can you feed your kids? Can you pay your mortgage? Is your home, foreclosed on? These are really shady, negative things, but it's the reality of this scenario. So it's tough. It's very tough, and it can have devastating backlash against you. And yeah, they may lose the suit, they may lose the lawsuit, but the other component of that is, you in discovery, you have to show all of the data and information that under that lawsuit that you took. So now the hospital knows which patients, which charts have been submitted to the federal government, and they can go address those however they deem necessary. So it's kind of a fact-finding mission too. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Tactics. It's tactics. You get in the world of legal tactics there, and none of it's pleasant for the individual that's whistleblowing.
No. Is there any way for us to protect ourselves from retaliation? Actionable things that we can do?
If I'm 100% behind anybody that wants to follow whistleblower action. There are some very big, it's a very big impact on your and your family's life. It is a very honorable, very meritorious thing to do. It can be a very profitable thing to do. But that being said, I would encourage you to have an attorney from day one to guide you in the process. Once you file the suit, if you experience in the first week back from filing your whistleblowing claim, all of a sudden something untoward happens at work and you get a different assignment, or for example, the nurses in your unit, they would rotate who is charge nurse. Okay. Charge nurse at that time was one less patient. You got $5 an hour more, but you got to admit decisions, yada, yada, bed placement, whatever. All of a sudden you weren't allowed that the first week back. Didn't rotate to you. If you have an attorney on board, he can make a call to the hospital's counsel, write a letter and say, hey, retaliation is occurring, and you can put them on notice. And many times it kind of scares them straight to, okay, they're on top of this. I mean, we were notified within 96 hours of this action that we were doing something wrong, and a lot of meetings will happen. A lot of people will have conversations, but it may be very beneficial to you to kind of curb the unfortunate things that may come your way.
Now, what role do legal advisors and whistleblower advocacy groups play in this process?
Whistleblower advocacy groups can provide a wealth of information. They can provide you direction. They can provide you a list of attorneys, I should say, that have experience in this field, that have experience dealing with federal government, that have experience dealing with employers. You kind of got to be an employment law specialist as well when you do this. So you kind of have to have multiple hats as an attorney. So they can really be beneficial in how to do things and guide you. But they aren't your attorney. Okay. So you do need a legal advisor from an attorney to kind of hold your hand and kind of make sure that each step is done correctly. Advocacy groups, hey, they're invaluable. You can pick their brain before you do anything, right? Before you even get an attorney. Go pick their brain. Hey, I think I have an issue. And go pick their brain, learn all kind of information, the pros, the cons.
What to find, what you need, the evidence.
What are the records. That's right. Documentation, all that kind of good stuff. So they're a great resource. I would be cognizant to say that, I wouldn't list who your employer is.
Right.
Wouldn't give certain details out. Definitely remember HIPAA while you're doing this. You can't share unprotected information. But they're a wealth of information, and I do encourage everybody to kind of pick their brains first.
Now, if you were considering as a healthcare worker, if you were considering maybe you do need to move forward with something, with whistleblowing on something, how do you balance your ethical obligations with those, what we know is probably going to happen, those risks personally and professionally?
That is the $1,000,000 question, Candace.
Yeah, it is.
It's a tough question. This is a personal question that you and your family have to decide on. And really you as an individual don't have to bring in your family. I don't know how you communicate or how you make decisions. Um, it's a tough road. It's not an easy road to pursue. It's a worthwhile road to pursue. There's there's a lot of value, and it's very valuable to patients, their health, future patients' health. But it is really a difficult decision, and you have to decide it yourself. I wish I could say, oh, hey, go talk to this person or go talk to that person, and you'll get the advice you need. For every suit that you see online where someone recovered 547 million or 2.2 billion, there's a dozen that didn't recover anything. And so then you're left, uh, holding the bag and with all the scrutiny. So it's difficult. It's difficult. And I wish I had better guidance, but that's something that you need to talk with an attorney. And here, the attorney can also tell you, hey, look, you don't have enough evidence.
Yeah.
You don't have enough documentation. Don't do it. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
Right? Or, okay, hey, yeah, you're going to win, and it's going to be a moral victory, but there's no money in it. And money should be the guiding force. But you know what?
Yeah.
People do have bills.
Yeah.
We got kids. They need to eat,
Right.
We want to send them to T-ball. We want them to go to art class and band practice and all these things. So it is a factor. It is important. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what you can do, how strong you are, and what you can stomach.
Right. And at the end of the day, something like this is not necessarily about money. As you were saying, most people didn't even know that they could have money coming towards them at the end. I had no idea that you could have some money coming towards you at the end, it potentially. But like you're saying, that money could be years and years and years and years down the road, depending on whatever this topic is that you are actually whistleblowing on. So it's really about that moral thought of do no harm. We are in our role to care for others and to do no harm. So,
why did you get into healthcare? You have to ask yourself, did I get into healthcare to do good, to help people? Do you have an opportunity to help people on a bigger scale than you ever imagined? And are you willing to take a chance to do that?
Right.
A lot of good stuff have come from it.
Absolutely. Long-term impacts of whistleblowing, how can we mitigate that?
It's tough. There's a lot of scrutiny on you as the whistleblower. Your work will get tougher. There's a high chance that you're terminated. You may be rehired later. You may be paid back pay. What does that look like in the interim? Let's say none of that happens. Let's say you keep your job and you stay right where you are. But no one communicates with you now. How fun is work to go to? You're always walking around kind of like an eye over your shoulder thinking, what am I going to do? You don't get the help that you used to get.
Right.
It's just tough. Before starting one of these things, I think you have to be cognizant and realize more likely than not, I'm going to need to find a new position elsewhere. I'm going to need to find a new job, new career. You say if you're a nurse, you could be a nurse, but you need to find a new position at a new employer. Just know that that's coming. Okay. And that if you've built lifelong friends at a place, it's difficult. It's easier now. Nurses are more transient. Travel nursing is a much bigger thing. And not that I'm suggesting to go travel, but This is very impactful when you think you may be in a rural community where there's only one hospital.
Right.
Where are you going to go? Do you need to move out of state? Do you need to move, is that closer moving out of state than moving to another city within your state? There's a lot of questions on that, but I think you just have, part of being prepared is knowing probably going to want to get a new position somewhere else. You may lose your seniority. You may lose where you are. But at the end of the day, if you're doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing. You're helping people. That's part of it. It's unfortunate that there's blowback and penalties, and you suffer psychological, emotional distress from this. But, if you're able to save lives, impact lives, prevent harm, a lot of value to it, a lot of value.
There's so much to think about within this topic. So as you were talking us through all this, I was trying to take notes on just so I could do a super quick recap. So I'm gonna see if I miss anything or if we need to expand on anything. But whistleblowing in healthcare, we know it's an important act of professional courage that directly protects patient safety and medical integrity. And when we take time to speak up about misconduct, dangerous practices, or systemic failures, what we're doing is really upholding that fundamental ethical principles that are, a part of medical practice. And this is going to, of course, require careful documentation, understanding of legal protections, and a commitment to patient welfare. So we're not saying whistleblowing does not involve personal and professional risk, because we all know that it does. But we also know that it represents a powerful mechanism for driving positive change, preventing medical errors, and maintaining the highest standards of healthcare delivery. So when you speak up, if you speak up, your voice can be the catalyst that saves lives, improves systems, and really reaffirms that core mission of healthcare, which is to do no harm. All right. Did I miss anything, Jay?
That's perfect. I couldn't say it better myself.
Well, Jay, it's always such a pleasure to have you join us and share your legal expertise, not teeth, with our listeners.
Happy to be here. Exciting topic, complicated topic. Excited.
Very.
But when you read some of the verdicts online, and I would encourage anybody, even if you're not in a position to make an actual whistleblower complaint, go online, take a look at some of the verdicts, and then really think about some of the rulings, some of the things that were prevented going forward. I think it'll shock you, some of the cases. It does me. Mm-hmm. But I also think, well, that was stopped. And think about the benefits and the prevention of harm that these actions allowed. And it's really reminds me why I got into healthcare in the first place.
Where can the listeners go if they wanted to look at some of these verdicts?
Simplest thing in the world. Type in whistleblower verdicts on Google, whatever your search engine is, and just read. And you'll get a litany of them, and you'll see you'll get more detail than you want to get. And just remember, they're allowed to do detail because it was released by OSHA. So they're allowed to release names and companies and situations. So
good
just
to know. Yes, good to know. Well, to our listeners, thank you for taking time to listen to our podcast. I also encourage you to explore many of the courses that we have available on elitelearning.com to help you continue to grow in your careers and earn CEs.
This podcast featured content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits. Take your learning to the next level by subscribing to more podcasts on compelling healthcare topics.